Malaysia's former Prime Minister Najib Razak is back behind bars. He's facing new charges linked to troubled state fund 1MDB and $628 million allegedly transferred from it to his personal bank account. He's been fighting allegations of money laundering, breach of trust, and abuse of power. And after his first arrest, had only been out on bail since July. In 2009, the 1MDB fund was set up to bankroll real estate and energy projects. But authorities say it funded lavish lifestyles for Najib and his cronies. Other high-profile indictments include ex-spy chief Hasanah Abdul Hamid and Najib's personal lawyer, Muhammad Shafee Abdullah. They've all denied any wrongdoing. The scandal came to light in 2015. In March, Najib was cleared after his own government's probe that many consider a sham. 2 months later, he lost the election to his mentor, Mahathir Mohamad. Mahathir has reopened the case and promises to bring Najib to justice. Police have seized a vast treasure trove of cash and luxury goods from homes linked to Najib. And that's just a fraction of what his government is accused of stealing. The U.S. Justice Department estimates $4.5 billion was siphoned from the fund.
Now, earlier we spoke to Clare Rewcastle Brown. She's an investigative journalist who helped uncover the scandal. She's also the author of the newly released book, The Sarawak Report, the inside story of the 1MDB expose. She's sceptical of the current government's ability to recover all the money lost by the fund.
Well, when does one fully recover money? Actually, I've been talking to people who know a lot about this just in the last few minutes. And we were discussing, for example, the depreciation in value of that $250 million yacht that the mastermind behind this conspiracy, the aide to Najib Razak, the Prime Minister, a young Malaysian called Joe Low, spent on this yacht, and the value of it now is estimated to be, maybe only $150 million, and perhaps that's one way of measuring, the leakage really in value. So Malaysia's never going to get back in full the money that was lost through this extraordinary heist. But obviously they're hoping that with all the seizures of assets that have taken place in Switzerland, Singapore, and most significantly in the United States, where $1.7 billion worth of assets were frozen, that at least some of that money can be coming back soon.
Joining me now from London is Animah Kosai. She's a Malaysian lawyer and founder of Speak Up, an organisation that encourages whistleblowers to come forward and advises companies on how to work more ethically. Animah, great to have you on the show. Now, Najib's arrest had been widely anticipated. Nonetheless, what does this represent in terms of corporate governance in Malaysia today? Does it make it more attractive to foreign investors?
Oh, absolutely, because I worked for a foreign company when this all started breaking up a number of years ago. And the question I was always getting was, why is nothing happening? And it was very clear there were selective prosecutions. Malaysia has really quite tough anti-money laundering laws as well as anti-corruption laws, slightly weak whistleblower protection law. But what was clear is that while they were going after other companies and so on, and certain people for corruption, the big fish, the very obvious one, the elephant in the room, nothing was happening. And what was also obvious is because here you have someone, in terms of governance, who is Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, and heading the sovereign fund, 1MDB, who was going to actually question when funds were being used for certain purposes, right? So this is why there was a lot of fear, not just in the political party, but people within the banks, within 1MDB themselves, that didn't stop this from happening. So there's this strong fear thing that was going on at the time.
Now, interesting you bring up the issue of whistleblowers, and your current organisation encourages whistleblowers to come forwards. And the 1MDB scandal actually started with one whistleblower coming forwards, by a chap by the name of Javier Justo. That was some time ago. What needs to change now to encourage more people like that to come forwards?
Well, this is where whistleblower protection is very important. Malaysia's law is pretty weak anyway in that regard, and it only protects you if you go to the authorities, the law enforcement authorities. And unfortunately, in that time, the law enforcement authorities, there's no proper independence. So even though at the time we have the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission where you can go to, but they were working together with the then Attorney General. And in fact, they had been doing investigations and they were ready to arrest Najib. What happens? Because the AG is appointed by the Prime Minister, he found out that that there was this arrest being drafted. And what does he do? He goes and fires the Attorney General. He also fires his Deputy Prime Minister at the time. And that sends shockwaves through the system. And what happens in the rest of the institutions is they clam up. The Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission officers were being harassed. They were under severe strain. And in the end, they were forced, their head was changed out and they were forced to drop the case. Until, of course, there was a change in regime.
Right. That was then. Now, under this new government, are you seeing signs that some of those weaknesses that you've just pointed out are being addressed?
One of the things is we have to get past this issue of personality, depending on who is the Prime Minister at the time. So you have a nice Prime Minister. Well, Mahathir at the moment is less authoritarian than he used to be. He's open to being questioned. He's open to being challenged. He allows the media a lot more freedom than he used to actually in the past. But what really needs to happen is we need to see proper changes in terms of institutional reform. So law and order, when we're talking about, I mentioned the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, the police, the Attorney General's chambers, all those need to be independent. And of course, the judiciary. The problem is at the moment, they're not. And part of that actually goes back to Dr. Mahathir's time as well. So if we can get law and enforcement independent of the executive, then we would have a much better chance. That needs to be institutionalized. And it hasn't yet. They're talking about it. I know there's reform being looked at, but it needs to happen.
Okay.
And the media.
One final quick question, Animah. How does Malaysia compare to other emerging markets now in terms of corporate governance? And can other emerging countries take any lessons from the way Malaysia is dealing with 1MDB?
I think the country that's probably doing the best at the moment is Brazil. Because I was looking at Brazil as well over the past few years. And I think that's one that shows the ability to, law enforcers come up and come up with some really good initiatives in terms of how to bring down people and politicians. We're talking about across the parties, right, in Brazil, and that must be really, really tough. And I know that in Malaysia, some of us were looking there and thinking, well, if Brazil can do it, what have they got that we don't have? And some of it was the power that the law enforcers and the judges had, which is lacking in Malaysia. As for in other emerging economies, right. I think Singapore can learn from Malaysia. Okay. Their laws are rather weak. Yeah.
Animah Kosai, we're going to have to leave it there. Legal expert Animah Kosai in London. Thank you very much indeed.